Well, hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rich Longo, and I'll be your host for today's Flycast Partners presentation. I want to thank you for joining us for another Flycast Partners webinar. Today's webinar will be Problem Management. A fool with a problem leaves many stones unturned. Our presenter today is Gielda. He is an ITIL V2 Master and ITIL V3 Foundation Certified IT Professional. Greg has a proven history in leadership consulting, ITIL implementation, developmental stewardship of all ITIL best practice disciplines, including change management, problem management, incident management, ITIL configuration, and release management. He has been in the IT industry for almost 20 years and has provided ITIL consultative skills to numerous clients regarding ITIL best practice and the critical success factors required for smooth implementation and operation. He has been with Flycast Partners almost since its inception and has played a key role in the overall success of Flycast Partners. Before we get started, Greg, I'm going to tell them a little bit more about us, about Flycast Partners. And Flycast Partners, we are here to deliver a seriously amazing IT experience, founded and staffed by personnel that have many years of experience in the IT space. We took the best ideas of these many years of experience in IT space and all the collective knowledge and added the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class implementation services and training in ITSM, ITAM, workload automation, artificial intelligence, capacity optimization, cost control, and many other data products, as well as enterprise service management, all using ITIL best practice. Our professional services can easily scale up or down to meet the IT needs of any customer, regardless of size, complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to reinforce your company's long-term IT success. Our ongoing remote administration and support service offerings will enable your organization to focus on those normal day-to-day operations, saving you both precious time and money. I encourage you to reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have or provide you with any information that you may be seeking. Or you can visit our website at www.flycastpartners.com and simply chat with one of our ITSM specialists live. We encourage you to utilize our website to take a look at some of the upcoming live events and training that we offer, whether it be a webinar that you might have interest in. We have a change management webinar coming up next week. I encourage you to take advantage of. We even have a full without a service desk a couple weeks out there on the 29th of March. Once again, the full series being presented by none other than Gielda, our own. We encourage you to take a look at any training that we offer in our training center that you may want to just learn something just because, or you may need some additional training in regards to whatever your job may be at your organization. So take a look at some of the certifications and training that Flycast Partners does offer on its website. There's several different courses out there that are all self-paced, or you can join a live class. I encourage you to take advantage of some of the white papers that we offer through the website. Without further ado, though, I am going to turn this presentation over to the star of our show today.
Hey, thanks, Rich, for the introduction. When you said the star of the show, I kept looking around for somebody important to show up. But since no one did, I'll do this. You
are important to us, Greg. We definitely appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to spend it with us today.
Oh, we still got to talk about this volunteer stuff I do. I'm just telling you. So.
There you go.
Just kidding, you're Rich. And thanks, everybody, for joining. We have a pretty big crowd today, so I really appreciate you all kind of gathering around the campfire as we talk not about lovely castles in Portugal, but instead, we're going to talk a little bit about problem management. Now, problem management, of course, is not the same thing as incident management, right? Everybody probably paid attention to the fact that Stephen Hawking passed away. Rich is going to hate me because he's going to have to edit that part out just so we don't date this presentation, I guess. But when Stephen passed away, it was kind of heart-wrenching for a lot of folks because he sort of made science real for a lot of people, right? But what he did behind the scenes was problem solving. He wasn't fixing incidents. He wasn't fixing the, trying to deflect an asteroid heading towards the Earth. He was solving the deep-rooted problems of cosmology. He was looking for root causes and the reasons why things happen, meticulous in their detail. And when we do work in our IT organizations, we have to do that same kind of sleuthing too. The problem is it has an enemy in incident management because incident wants to just put the fire out and move on. And the fire investigators would really appreciate it if you didn't tear the building completely to smithereens so that my fire investigation job is easier later, which is kind of what problem management does too. So we're going to talk a little bit about problem management and the fact that a fool without a problem leaves many stones unturned. You don't always look under all the places where the root causes could be hiding. And instead, what we do is we just keep fixing the same stuff over and over again. So with that, we're going to move forward. The purpose of today's discussion really is to talk about the process. We're not tool specific when we talk about these things because we want to get our processes right before we ever stick them in a tool. It'd be important to have them written down on paper properly. We recommend some problem record content. So we're going to talk about some ways to approach the data you want to gather and try to wrap that data into, a record of some type, right? You're going to record this information. Where you're recorded is obviously less important than the fact that you do, but having it recorded obviously in a system of record that you can go back to and say, yes, this is the de facto what happened, is obviously made much better. We'll talk a little bit about how the process of problem management actually flows too. So I love putting quotes in my prezos. This is another one. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Another great physicist who passed, Albert Einstein. Yet when we operate, as I mentioned, our IT help desks, right, they feast on fixing the same broken stuff every day. That's what they live on. And when people call, we have a top 10 list. These are the top 10 most frequent reasons. And they're probably the same top 10 that we've been dealing with for ages. Right? We have a list. We know what they are. We have people who are trained specialists so that they can fix these things even faster. Sometimes the help desk even takes some of the workload off of second and third level support because they just come in so often and these guys are busy up the food chain, the specialists are. So we'll send it to the generalists and let them kind of ferret it out. We train them to do this stuff. But the truth is, guys, incident management, which is what we're practicing at our service desks and or what we're practicing when we parse it out to level 2 or 3 support, it's not a problem just because you sent it to level 3, right? Engineers have to look at it, but it still was an incident that triggered it. In the end, those folks at the service desk, they're getting trained how to fix stuff really fast, but it's the same stuff every day. Problem management's job is to get under the hood and start figuring out why. Why is this happening? So that we don't keep doing the same things every day, right? So that it's actually different, new and exciting. And we keep removing the rocks that are in there. The new and exciting part was me trying to be rah-rah. I don't think I succeeded, actually. But we don't want to keep repeating those same events and tell me about it. The customer definitely doesn't. They're sick of calling. If you had a cable box at home, some of us do, and every 2 days it needed to be rebooted by them at the office, wouldn't you get sick of it? Can't you just give me a new one or something? This is dumb. That's why there are lemon laws, right? Because things keep getting fixed over and over again. Yet in IT, man, we will just keep fixing the same broken stuff without getting to that root cause and without eliminating the reasons why. So we're going to talk about problem and how problem management can help avoid that. A brief story. When I was working for a health organization directly as an employee up in the Northland where I hail from, I was one of the first ITIL employees that they had, right? ITIL certified folks. So I wasn't trying to, preach from a pulpit or anything. But when the time came, we got to talk about problem management and how we could maybe work it in. So I said, well, as you guys start to approach outages or other events, let's start working on getting some investigation happening so we can find out why. So it just so happened they had an outage. It was perfect timing. And the outage was, had some reason behind it. So they were kind of excited. Because they were like, we know why the outage occurred. I'm like, this is awesome. We're already starting down the path of problem management. The outage occurred, they told me. I feel like I should have a drum roll. The outage occurred, they told me, because the server crashed. Awesome. Good. Except, why did the server crash, right? We're not asking all the right questions to get deeper in. And as we'll see through this prezo, that's what we're trying to get into, right? We're trying to talk about how do you get under the hood and find out what's going on and make that a real process. Instead of somebody should investigate why that keeps happening, and then it drops off the map and we just keep taking the same calls. So the process is responsible for managing the life cycle of all identified problems. Problems are the underlying root cause, right? The reason why. Incidents keep happening as a result of problems that oftentimes go unfixed. We've all had to relegate ourselves to the fact that we will forever treat the incident only when we have a cold, right? We'll never get to the underlying problem, which is we have a virus that they don't want to stamp out. Lots of money to be made on treating the cold, so the incident is more beneficial in that particular case for them to deal with. But it's those incidents that keep occurring that problem management is trying to fester, or stop from festering, excuse me, so that it doesn't create an issue further down the road. So there are two kind of modes in problem management. One's reactive, where we're responding to incidents with investigations, trying to find out why. Right? We want to eliminate those root causes in this process. The other is more preventive. We're fixing things before they become an issue, right? And when we do patch management in its rudimentary form, right, when we're patching things, we are preventing incidents. We are doing preventive problem management. Although we may not think of it as that, it's really what it is. These are problem management efforts. Patching is a way of saying we're going to spend the time today so we don't have to spend it tomorrow, because if we spend it tomorrow in the old pay me now or pay me later scenario, it usually is much more costly later. So highly effective problem management is going to mature from one to the other. And you say, but I'm already patching things, so aren't I already mature? Well, in some respects, yeah, right? There's a process by which you do that if you guys are patching your endpoints and or your servers. That is going to roll up into a problem management process, right, where we talk about the weekly patches that were applied at our problem management meeting, as well as we talk about the other changes that may have gone in so that we can see if there's some fallout from those. We'll get to that in a minute. Every process has a block diagram that goes with it, right, where there's an entrance criteria up at the top and an exit criteria down at the bottom, and in the middle, poof, a miracle happens. So with problem management, no exception, right? We've identified a recurring major extended potential incident that requires root cause analysis. So maybe it's happened or maybe it hasn't happened. It's just a potential. But we got to get to the bottom of why this is going on. It's logged for discussion at our problem management meeting, so someone brings it up. Or from incident matching at the service desk, we look at our last week's incidents or our ongoing daily events especially, and say, hey, we better get to the bottom of this because it looks like something's blown up really good. Determine the problem sponsor. Somebody, depending on the area the problem comes from, maybe, is going to be riding herd. They're not day-to-day project managing the problem, but they're the people who would plow the road if we can't get any resources, because they're the ones that ultimately are going to dish out the resources or make sure that someone else does. We determine the cost, frequency, impacts associated with it, because problems are really looking at incidents that have occurred, and that we know that the thing we just did to fix the incident is just going to come back again next week. It's not gone. We just temporarily put that thing out, right? That's why we want to get problem management involved so that we can stop it. Determine root causes of the problems using the 5 whys methodology. We'll touch on that. Determine long and short-term remediation steps. That's important because sometimes we have a short-term fix, reboot the server every Wednesday night, and that'll clear the memory leak from the application. We'll be okay. Except that's not obviously a permanent fix, right? You could have dozens of applications misbehave. You got to do that with, and it just becomes a nightmare to manage. Better to have it fixed, whatever the thing is, permanently. So there may be a short-term and a long-term fix. Sometimes the short-term is the only one you want. Bubblegum and duct tape is just fine for the applications or systems that are being retired in the next 30 days. But if that's not what's happening, you got to live with this thing. Then we got to find a way to make nice with it. And bubblegum and duct tape doesn't work. The long term is sometimes the best choice. Implement the agreed solution, whatever that is, long or short term. We may eventually do both, the short term one and then the long term one. And then validate the efficacy. If it's long term, it should stop calls. If it's short term, there should have been a problem management record turned into a knowledge base article that's used by the service desk to make sure that the stuff gets fixed. It's kind of a known error. Stuff that we know happened. Yes, we know. This is our workaround. We fix it as fast as we can and we move on. We can't eliminate every single call to the service desk, right? I can't imagine what that picture would look like. Imagine a movie filming a service desk where there's no phones ringing, everybody just sitting around. No, I can't either. In the end, we have a resolved problem with closed or known error as our outcome. So terminology-wise, we have problems, right, which is that unidentified root cause of one or more incidents. Problem control, this is really kind of the framework we put around it that says this is what we're going to do to control the problem. This is the assembly line for the problem if the problem is the part. The known error state is really one of the outcomes of the problem process or the control process. It says, you know what, we know about this. We've agreed that our short-term fix is what's going to go in. We're not going to fix it long-term yet, but we will continue to study the issue. I will take it under advisement. And honestly, by the next time that somebody calls and there's, 800 people sitting on their hands for another 2 hours, it's under advisement pretty quick because that's a costly incident twice now. And it may be ruining more than just hard dollars. It could be exposing other issues, right, to the public, depending on who you are and what walk of life you come from. There's a problem meeting that takes place. There's an actual meeting where people talk about ongoing resolutions and bring up the problems that are due for discussion. It's kind of like bringing your homework to class, right? If you're due to talk about it in 2 weeks, you ought to have your update in 2 weeks or send a proxy who does. Your minion should be able to tell the problem team what the update is. That way you can give folks 2-week cycles. Not every problem has to be reported back every week. Some have a tighter schedule depending on their priority or technical impacts. Problem record, of course, this is where you're documenting the actual data. And we're going to talk a little bit about what goes in there too. Roles in the process include the problem manager. This does not mean it's your incident manager. They're two different things. It's like saying the fire chief is also the fire investigator. Not really. He might accompany the fire investigator, but that's a different office. They're looking at it from a different perspective. In fact, they kind of have, as I said earlier, competing goals. Incident management firemen come in, put out fires, knock down walls, chop holes in things, basically destroy in order to put the fire out, right? Not that the fire doesn't damage stuff too, but they don't care what else they have to damage. It's already on fire, man. I'm just putting it out. Problem says, hey, I wish we would have had the stuff that you destroyed because, yeah, that would have been useful in investigating why. So they usually conflict with each other. I don't recommend that they're the same person. But, they chair the problem management meeting. They don't even really have to be technical. In fact, almost better if they're not, because technical people, me included, have the tendency to think, oh, yeah, we know what the answer is, so I'm not going to even ask the question. But non-technical people will ask the questions and make other people make those answers happen, right? The problem sponsor, this is a person who plows the road to make sure that folks are getting the job done that we said they were going to do. If I don't get an update within my first 2 weeks, I'm contacting my problem sponsor and saying, hey, we put this person in charge. I know that they're in a management group that reports up to you, director maybe, right? Would you please make sure that those folks are doing what they need to do so that we can get this resolved? They assist in determining the appropriateness of that response too. So is the recommendation short-term, long-term? Does that make sense from the team's perspective? You get an assignee. This is the person who usually goes and digs up information about it. They find out information, details, maybe the incident information, etc. And they'll take actions such as finding out why this happened, not just because the server crashed. They could change during the process too. Could be a different person. So pop quiz. When does an incident become a problem? When it impacts multiple users, when it is of extended duration, when it impacts critical business systems, or the ever-popular none of the above. Can I have one of those? So impacts multiple users, extended duration, critical business systems, or none of the above. The actual correct answer, which I just skipped past for reasons unknown, is none of the above. Incidents don't become problems, right? Any more than stuffy noses become colds. They were already, or they weren't. It's not like they transform. Incidents indicate you have one, right? I have a problem. I have a lot of incidents around this particular event every Monday morning at 7. Something's going on. It tells me I have a problem, but the incidents don't become one. They're just indicators. And that's the reason why the problem folks involved will need to look at those incidents and start tallying up the numbers, right? Linking those together in your problem record system in some way so that we can reference all these incidents against this problem. Maybe it's time to fix it. So where to start? Develop the problem process, right? We got to have that, obviously, policies. Assign a problem manager. Develop the problem management system of record. Make sure there's a place to store the data. And determine the meeting schedule. When do we meet? What day? Wednesday at 2? What's the time? Also, identify the most recent major incident. That might be a good place to start. Take the last time we had a recent major incident. Maybe that was just yesterday. Might have just been this morning. Who knows? They happen, right? Stuff goes wrong. But let's do root cause analysis on that one. Let's take that one apart and see if we can figure out why that happened. Use this methodology against it and see what we get. And then move towards identification of the top 10 maybe recurring incidents. Because what we're trying to do is obviously eliminate the reasons why people call the service desk, because that's just disruptive to their day job, right? Not the service desk, that's their job, I get you. But it's disruptive to the day job of the people who have to call because stuff is broken. So let's look at those common things and then make it so that the things they call about are the ones that don't happen as frequently. Continue to process by identifying any other potential recurring issues, maybe high priority incidents that have happened. And that's why that problem meeting can discuss those things too, which is what we're about to talk about. The actual meeting is hosted by the problem manager, whoever that is. They may have a proxy, they may have a sidekick, somebody's taking notes, somebody's making updates. Maybe the person who chairs it can do the same. But the agenda usually includes a report. Now this might be verbal, oftentimes it is, but it's verbal like from a document, or you pass around a document to look at, or you put it up on a screen or something. But we're doing all the investigations. We're really just talking about this is the stuff that's on the docket for today. So we can set an agenda. These are the problems that are due for update. It becomes an open forum from raising those issues for investigation too, because as we talk about the ongoing stuff and see where we're at and resolving these things permanently, or at least with a quick fix, right? Everybody in that meeting, all the managers, all the folks that are in attendance, now take that information back to their employees, and we have a better understanding of, hey, how are we doing on working this stuff out? For those of you brave, you can invite business heads into these meetings because they may want to understand just how we're doing against that particular dragon of a problem that is going on underneath all those incidents. Right? I say if you're brave because you want to make sure this meeting is working like it should be before you open the kimono. Maybe not. It depends on the organization's culture. Logging new investigations, right? Because we're going to track the new stuff. We're going to bring that stuff up in this meeting. They'll get logged as a part of that agenda. Every problem has within it the seeds of its own solution. If you don't have any problems, you don't get any seeds. Totally true, right? Anybody who thinks they don't have problems in their organization, they're out there. They definitely are. And within it, you can find actually ways of making this process kind of a flywheel. You start to gain some traction with it after resolving some of the first couple hits. You start eliminating some of those big items from the hit list for the most frequent calls that are coming in. And suddenly that process looks like it's making traction. You're getting seeds so that you can continue to sow and even reap more in the future. Eventually, the problem process will have eliminated all those big chunky reasons why people call the service desk. And a number one thing you can look at on service desks to see if problem management is evoked is if the same calls are happening week over week, the same most critical issues or whatever they are that are coming in or keep happening and they don't diminish, you're probably not doing problem management. So that's usually the first call resolved stuff at the service desk says, look, yay, first call, I fixed it on first call, which means I've seen this 10,000 times before and I do it with a push of a button. Now, that's not to say that problems don't become those known errors, right? Depends on what we're working on. But in the end, if we can eliminate a chunk of those, then that top 10 should show some churn, indicating the problem process is working and we're getting those seeds. So first things first, the document phase. Documentation phase of the problem process. Right? The problem investigation is deemed necessary based upon the data, right? Identified vulnerabilities, etc. We identify a sponsor, we assign a problem owner, And any initial representative incident we would note and or tie out to it. Maybe your system allows you to tie those two tickets together somehow. So you say this ticket and that ticket. Yeah, this is why we spawned a problem record, because we had this many incidents. We want to document it. Next, we move it to the discovery phase, because once we're done documenting it in the meeting, unless there's more info to get, right? Hey, I'll get back to you with the additional notes about that. Okay, cool. Or, hey, I'm still gathering documentation about incidents. But when we're done, we're going to move that to the discovery phase. This is where we actually start digging. Right? Incident data is gathered during this phase. You can do it during the documentation phase too, but you need to find at least one there. Here you're looking for kind of all the rest. That was just the tip of the iceberg, right? That represented the one that you found during the first phase. Frequency of occurrences, right? Those representative incidents, how often do they happen? That kind of data should be gathered here, so we can make some decisions about what to move forward with. Sometimes fixing problems is expensive. So we'll talk about that too, right? Cumulative cost of ongoing incidents. Like I said, you compare the cost of what's going on to the fix. Sometimes it's cheaper to just continue to fix. Any additional notes regarding when this happens, right? Are there conditions under which these seem to occur? Is always on Mondays, whatever that information needs to be. Only then do we move towards root cause analysis. This is where we get to the underlying reasons for the occurrence. Why did this stuff happen to begin with? And we want to use the 5 whys. The 5 whys are pretty simple. They sound exactly like it says. If you ask, usually, doesn't mean there always has to be 5, but usually there is. If you ask why 5 times to a question, you usually get down to the lowest common denominator thing that you can control. There are some things that are really outside of your control. Obviously, a relationship with a vendor is not one of those things, right? Because you can control whether you have that relationship. The vendor actions you couldn't control, but whether you maintain that is a different story. So this means you can use the 5 whys to start asking questions. Like if I have a scenario that says, hey, I got a hole in my garage roof. Why? The squirrel keeps chewing holes in it. Why? I'm storing my bird seed up there in the attic. Why? Well, because I really don't have any room while I bathe it. It's a freaking mess. That's where I'd rather put it. It's a little safer down there. You put it in some bins down there. So if we cleaned your basement, then we could store the seed there, and it would be protected from the squirrels, and you wouldn't have any more holes in your roof. Awesome. So you can see it doesn't always take 5 whys. Might take a little less. But we want to get to the thing we can control. If you did this, then that would stop, and so would these other things stop, and therefore people would stop calling me. That 5 whys is critical for getting root cause analysis done. It represents that lowest level controllable reason for why it's happening. So when, the folks came back to me and said, we know why the outage occurred, the server crashed. Clearly you all knew, yeah, that's not the reason. Why did the server crash? It's almost instinctive that you would go for that. But they were like, no, we got it nailed, man. Server crashed. This is why you want to go deeper. Problem management is looking to ferret out and stop those incidents, ferreting out the reasons why. Of course, additional notes. I love this Douglas Adams quote. The major difference between a thing that might go wrong and a thing that cannot possibly go wrong is that when a thing that cannot possibly go wrong goes wrong, it usually turns out to be impossible to get at and repair. This is what you have happen to you when you're doing problem management, right? Really? It's foundational. The thing that we got to fix is foundational to all these apps. Really? I mean, this is what Intel and AMD and others must have felt like when they found the errors in their microcode that could be exploited, right? Oh, man. That's almost impossible. I can't really change it. The chip's already made. I can only change it through software, which isn't necessarily the best approach, but it's the best fix we have. So this proves true time and time again. That's why you want to look at those things and say, okay, what's the likelihood of us fixing this thing permanently if it's foundational? We're not going to replace everybody's CPU on the planet. That would be bad. So instead, we got to come up with something that's workable. Sometimes the things you're looking at for problems are impossible to get at, and sometimes you just don't want to. That's why we have recommendation phase, where we talk about things that are, hey, these are things we could do. is what we could do. Sometimes there's more than one. Oftentimes, the long-term fix is only one thing, right? There's really only one way forward on this permanently. We can bubble gum it together if we want to, but so recommended actions are going to be ferreted out based on the investigation that was done early in that discovery phase, and we want to have that appropriately supported by whatever evidence we have. Hey, it's going to fix these incidents. People will stop calling about this thing. The preferred action and the alternate are usually listed. So, alternatively, we could put a knowledge base article together until we get this fixed, because it'll take us a week or so to roll this change out. So here's a KB article to help fix it in the interim. And then we're going to put it on our radar, and we're going to put a change in place, and we're going to make the change well planned, and we're going to put it in place, and we're not going to have any more calls, and we're going to verify that we don't. And then we can do something with the problem record, right? Because we're verifying that people have actually stopped calling. But the recommendations can be two-pronged. Short-term fix, long-term fix. Not everything would jump to a short-term fix. And some things require no physical change to my infrastructure at all. Sometimes it's a training issue. In fact, a lot of times it's a training issue, right? Which means what I need to do is update documentation. There's really not a short-term fix for that. That isn't the long-term fix. Fix the documentation. So that kind of stuff from a recommendation standpoint, you want to think about this phase as, what should we do? How do we stop this from happening? One of those outcomes could be this. Could be a known error, right? We got a permanent fix. We understand how we could fix it, but we know we're not going to do that right now. So we're going to do this instead. Or we might not have a permanent fix. We might not know how to best approach this, but we know how to sort of patch it up and send them on their way temporarily. At least they won't be bleeding everywhere. So let's use that short-term one. So root cause is identified in a permanent fix, or workaround has been identified but not yet implemented. We haven't put anything in place other than this. So known errors would usually be logged against the configuration item in which they occurred, so that when you look at your CMDB later, you'll be able to say, this CI has these known errors against it. If I'm a project manager, that's good to know, because I tend to land projects on existing infrastructure. Sometimes I buy all new, but usually I'm using something in there already. Is that a problematic piece of equipment? Because that's going to make my project not successful if it is. We should know that. So we should have that data ready. That way you can link the known error to the actual configuration item and see it. That might be documented as a part of a KB article. Doesn't mean you can't link the KB article to represent it, especially in cases where a workaround is going to be the only choice we have for the foreseeable future, or the thing's going away and I don't need to fix it permanently. We're just going to rip it out of here anyway. And like I said, it might be the final state. Some things will never get beyond known error, and they'll stay there forever. Don't close a problem unless it's demonstrably rectified, right? Unless you know that it's fixed, that it works. The remediation step is usually where we implement that recommendation, where we say, okay, I'm putting this in place. I'm doing the change to the infrastructure. I am doing the change to the documentation. I am going to write my knowledge base article. We're in remediation phase. That means that you could potentially come back to your problem meeting and say, yeah, I'm still working on the documentation fix. It just has to be approved by somebody. Obviously, we're hoping those things happen as fast as they can, but it's possible. So we could have this, the problem record be in this stage for a little while as we remediate and as we verify. Raise requests for change where you need to, because we're going to need to change something most of the time to make this stuff happen. And like I said, that remediation is going to persist until we get some validation of success. So we're going to stay in fix-it-quick mode with this knowledge base article that says we're aware of it, and these are the steps you take every time to fix it, and the user will be restored in short order, but we're sorry that it's happening, and we're working on a long-term fix. That's really what you're trying to do. Make the work that you have to do as quick as possible, because it's not like every call you get, as we've already established, is new at the service desk. We've never seen this before. Most of it is stuff we have, and if we can have everybody reading from exactly the same chapter and verse, then we'll know exactly where we are in the process, and everybody will be given the same answers and fixing people as quickly as possible. Closed, the ever popular "we're done with the process" should really be the end of the line for a problem. Right? Further investigations will ever be taken against the problem, right? If they are, you don't want to use this because if you're going to continue to do investigations against that problem, it's in a known error state. We haven't really permanently fixed it. We just have a temporary workaround. Even if the temporary workaround is forever, that's the only way you ever do it. The problem never really closes because it's not gone, and we're aware of it, and we have a knowledge base article or a configuration item with a link to the known error as the problem record, and we've advised the service desk so that they understand it because they have that information in their system of record. You would also potentially reinvestigate if the problem reoccurs. So after we've remediated and we've done the long-term fix, we put in the change request, and now Monday morning, people are still calling for the same thing. So don't mark that change request as successful, because I don't care how good you put it in, it didn't do its job. And don't close the problem record yet, because it's not been remediated. So don't close it if no remediation has actually been planned or taken. Leave it in a known error status. So let's talk about this. Let's break it all down. Break it down. Didn't come out right, did it? Problem record contents by primary phase. We just break it down so you can kind of see the steps and the contents, what goes in them based on the phases that we just went through. So during the document phase, we have the problem type described, the problem description, when the next update is due. So, hey, I expect you to tell me within 2 weeks or 1 week at the next problem meeting or whatever the time frame is. Let me know what's going on with this. Update the document or come to the meeting with your, with something you're going to expound on. Who's the problem sponsor should be figured out. The problem assignee should be figured out during that phase. When we go to discover, we might change who that problem assignee is. Maybe somebody else is assigned to do that part of the task. Maybe we have a separate task attached to the problem record to do that. But we want to discover the number of incidents that have occurred, the frequency and impact of those occurrences. So, hey, they happen every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at exactly 2 p.m. And it always affects this department. Financial impacts is what we're trying to get to here, because if 80 people sit on their hands for 20 minutes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that's a lot of money. Not to mention the fact that we're behind in processing now, or whatever the case may be. We want some notes, of course, record the status of the fact that we're in discovery. During root cause, after the discovery phase, during root cause, we're actually getting the category of the problem. This is where we categorize the problem, because we might assume that it's a technical issue or a training issue and have a broad category that we'll list for the problem. Yeah, we think it's technical. Yeah, we think it's a training issue, documentation issue, whatever it is. But once we do this discovery, we're going to have an actual category. Yes, this is a technical issue, and it is in our operations area, and it is this configuration item that we linked out to the record. So we want to get more specific as we drill in, but at least we understand, we think we're pursuing one. And it's interesting because you can have many cases where we said, hey, we thought it was technical and it wasn't. Turns out it was a documentation issue. It wasn't really a technical concern. We were just configuring it wrong the whole time. So that kind of information goes in during that phase, root cause. Recommendation phase, primary and secondary recommendations should be filled in on your system of record. The technical severity to implement. A lot of folks use the word severity to replace priority, which is fine. I mean, you can call it whatever you want to. Severity is often thought of, though, from a technical perspective when we think of, hey, you know what? This is a complete teardown. If you take your car in and somebody says, yeah, you have a hole blown in the side of your cylinder wall. That is a technically severe thing to fix. That's a big deal. So is a blown head gasket. Right? Those are big things. If somebody says, you know what? I got to change your air filter. Not so bad. That's not a technically big thing. We need to understand that, because the recommendations that we pick, obviously the known error one, if it's just documentation, the technical severity is like 0. I don't really have to do anything except write some stuff down. But if I got to tear some stuff apart, we need to understand just how severe this will be. Complete major overhaul or rip and replace or whatever the case is. And of course the status of recommendation. And then remediation, where we're actually fixing it. I am now putting my article together. I am now gathering the change data. The change may eventually be linked to the ticket during remediation. Once it's implemented, we can then see that relationship. And then the closure, right, with any notes, etc. And we would continue the investigation, obviously, if incidents come back. Great quote from Albert. I love it. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. This is enormous when it comes to your own cultural change about this. You got to think about how you think about things. Wow, that just got complicated. No, really, when you come into work tomorrow, right, if you do things exactly the way you did them today, then of course everything's going to be the same as it was. Why would it be different? You're doing the same stuff. The culture that created we have all these problems and never get resolved cannot be the same one you bring to bear at fixing it, because obviously that particular culture, that particular mindset created the issue to begin with. So you do have to think different when you come in. And making your problem process work means having folks who are saying, you know, maybe it's a small team to start. We're willing to make things look and feel different. We're going to create this meeting. We're going to put it on the agenda. We're going to start getting to the bottom of these. We're going to start documenting the process. And we're going to make sure that we're involved not just in the preventive stuff like patching from an awareness perspective, right? Hey, by the way, the following patches went in last week to patch the following critical vulnerabilities, right? Nobody has to read each individual bulletin. Just high level is good. But change the consciousness. Change the way you think about it, and then you can get here, right? So critical success factors, clearly policy has to come first. Any of my presentations talk about this. Without a policy document, I do not have any law of the land. The process should help us follow the law of the land. So we want to get our policy in place first, document that stuff. You can get your process after that, but you must get executive support of your policy, because they're kind of the ones that ultimately enforce the laws, right? You got to get them to sign off on it. Otherwise, folks will make an end run around your process and say, but they're making me do work. Stop it. Right? And they'll take it up to whatever executive did not sign on this, and they'll be like, there, why are they being mean to you? And they'll let them go right around the process. So don't. Get executive support and then communicate that. Communicate the heck out of it. Start small with a little drum beat in the distance. Make the drum beat louder as you get closer, so that the communications start coming more and more frequently. People understand that you're about to launch this process, and they understand that it's reason to be excited about it, right? You must get your shoes laced up and run, because anybody who hates doing process is going to hate the fact that you're rolling this out. They're not going to be appreciative of it, and they will spread vicious lies. Just vicious, right? About what the process is, what it'll do. It's going to be horrible. We won't even want to come in, man. Long before you ever get the truth of what the process is supposed to do for you. So make sure you get a communications plan in place that makes sense. In summary, guys, it's an extremely important process to the success of literally any IT shop, because we do not want to be caught in the rut of continuing to do the same thing over and over again, right? It's like Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill. Tomorrow it comes down and we push it back up again. Same exact thing. Can we change that? Problem management lets us do that. It'll help us reduce the number of incidents that we get, especially the ones that we are claiming we're fixing on first call. So when your first call resolution numbers start tanking, problem management is digging its hole in there and entrenching in your organization. Reduces the frequency too, right? Not just the number, but how often they occur. Saves you time by avoiding fixing the same things over and over again. Customers really don't like that. Saves money. Hey, time and money are important factors, right? Somebody said they were one and the same, kind of like space and time. It gets you guys out of brush fire mode. This is so huge. If we stay in brush fire mode, then all we do is rush from one fire to the next fire. And it seems like we only hired our IT staff to put out fires, which is not really why they're there. They just happen to fight fires too. Really, they're there to help maintain and to help drive change to, meaning growing, our IT infrastructure. It's definitely going to reduce the volume of first call resolve. Like I said, it's kind of a good measure to look at, because usually if it doesn't have to get escalated to anybody else, it means the service desk is fixing it. Usually if the service desk is fixing it, it means it's extremely frequent, because I don't need to get the specialists involved. We can fix that right here at the general practitioner's office. Thanks. That's usually a good sign if that's starting to go down. So remember, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. Good opportunity to make that change and have it be different. I don't know that we're going to have an opportunity to take live questions today, but we do these presentations live. So, Rich, I'm going to turn this back over to you. Thanks, everybody, for listening to me yap at you for the last 45 minutes. I really appreciate the listen. Thank you.
Thank you again, Greg, for a great presentation. And no, we do not have any time for additional questions, but folks, if you do have any questions in regards to problem management or any of the ITIL processes, please reach out to us at info@flycastpartners.com. That's info@flycastpartners.com. We do offer ITIL classes, and we can help you get into an exam if you're ready for that. You can also reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. I encourage you to attend next week's webinar. It's on change management. A fool with a tool is still a fool. Change management that will also start in the afternoon. So with that being said, enjoy your weekend, folks. Don't freeze to death out there, and we'll see you next week.